Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be doing a tier list ranking of some ancient Greek helmets. My name's Adam, I'm an ancient Greek reenactor and I've had a lot of experience wearing these helmets for a long period of time, fighting in these styles of helmets, being out on long marches in Greece in the blazing sun, and I thought it would be really fun to sort of give, not only my favourite visual helmets, but also some of my favourite ones to wear practically. Now this video is a little bit inspired by History Hit's recent video where Matt goes and ranks medieval helmets. However, I found I had a few issues with that, as many of the helmets he was ranking he clearly had never worn or never used practically, but yet was giving a practical lens on it. So I'm going to be ranking these helmets based on appearance, how much do I like the look of them. Of course, some ancient Greek helmets look absolutely awesome. Comfort, how comfortable are they to wear, not just how do they fit you, how is the airflow, how is the visibility, but of course the compromise as well of protection. So we're going to sort of have three main categories, that being appearance, comfort, and protection. I believe the same ones the History Hit gave, but hopefully I'll be able to give some insight into the actual practical reasons as to why I've ranked them this way. So I thought I had to start it with one of the classics, that being the sort of earlier, more archaic style Corinthian, the specific one being the supposed marathon helmet, which is actually what this helmet here is based on, made by Genius Steelcrafts. I'm a massive fan of the archaic style Corinthian. It is my favourite model of Greek helmet, my favourite model of helmet ever. Not only that, it lasted for hundreds of years and got adapted, so it was evidently effective. I actually prefer this to the later Hermione Corinthian, which is more enclosed, a sort of typical Corinthian helmet that you might think of. I like the shaping of it more, but also I find that the slightly more open cheek plates and sometimes larger eyes, not always, I personally prefer. This helmet here has been worn for the Plataea event this summer, and I found that the airflow that you get through the cheek plates being just slightly wider, I personally preferred. So I'm going to, straight off the bat, plonk this. Is that my personal bias? I'll put it in A for now, just because I'm trying to be objective here. So visually, I give this style of helmet a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love it. I think it has such character. It's sort of became the staple, of course, of the ancient Greek hoplites, though it eventually sort of got overturned in popularity. But this is sort of, that figurehead and the most iconic sort of ancient style helmet. Maybe I'd argue the Hermione Corinthian is. But for me personally, wearing it, absolutely love it. I prefer it to the Hermione Corinthian, and I do prefer it to the Illyrian Helmet, which is we'll get onto next, actually. So this model of helmet, I find, is sort of a very good balance between protection and comfort, with having slightly larger gaps between cheek plates, but still having very, very good face protection. So I would say for comfort, your peripheral vision, I can wear this to show you guys. So the eye holes on this particular helmet are basically the largest that we have historically, so most would likely be slightly smaller than this. But it's important to note, of course, these helmets, as with basically every helmet throughout history, was padded in some way. So we have evidence of linings being installed through stitching. Mine doesn't have any lining, however it's padded with a Pilos cap, which seems to be the most common that we see, a felted Pilos cap. This of course makes the helmet fit very snugly, and it absorbs lots of the blows and does everything that a liner should. Helmets really need a liner to function. Other evidence that we have for liners are woven sort of hats, and we even have written descriptions of a type of sea sponge being used. So these helmets were padded, but very close fitting to the wearer. As we can see, that seems to be the preference for lots of these Greek styles of armour, is very close fitting and very light. I can see peripherally almost perfect. I can see my hands there, so basically exactly the same as without. Up, I can see pretty good. I can see from about there up. And down, I can also see very well. I can see out of the gap here, and I can also see through the gap here. There is a blind spot that I have very roughly about here. However, it's also very, very important to note, of course, the style of combat that we're dealing with here, because with a very large shield, this area you don't really need to see anyways. But this offered great protection. You know, my eyes are still pretty well covered, decently large eye holes, but nasal and cheek plates, and of course the rim of the shield would be coming up. The whole top of my head, best protection around, and the cheek plates come in and offer very, very good protection, eventually getting elongated to protect the neck a little bit. But comfort-wise, massive fan of this helmet. I'm going to give this helmet a solid, going to give this helmet an 8 out of 10. And protection-wise, I'm going to give this also an 8 out of 10. So, of course, it's not fully enclosed. However, it's pretty darn good. It's very solid. Next up, we have a very popular and common helmet type in the Greek world, the Illyrian Helmet, which I actually have, so I'm going to go grab one of those. So this is the Illyrian Helmet, so called because many have been found around the city-state of Illyria. However, it is likely that this is actually a Peloponnesian origin, has Peloponnesian origin. So this is, I believe, roughly 1/3 of all of our archaeological finds of classical helmets in the Greek world are of the Illyrian type. So this seems to have been a very, very popular helmet, and I think for good reason. It still offers very good protection, of course. You've still got the whole head encased in bronze, and you've still got these cheek plates, which are very good. However, your sort of face itself is open. And this, of course, does multiple things. It still offers you very, very good protection. It allows your breathing to be completely uninterrupted. Your vision is very, very good in this. And comfort-wise, I think comfort-wise, it's going to be higher than the Corinthian, just because you do have, you know, that more open space. So I gave that an 8. I'm going to probably give this helmet a 9 for comfort. It'll be padded with the same stuff, no liner in this, but it would be sitting about here. So your face is completely open. It's very, very airy and nice, but you're still very, very well protected. However, there is, of course, a compromise, because this does leave you open to more threats, but it leaves you more comfort. So for that reason, of course, its protection is going to be down. But I'm still going to give this probably... I'll give this a protection of 6. I think overall its protection is pretty good. It's still got very solid cheek plates, full helmet encased. Overall, very, very good. And visually, I never used to particularly be a fan of the Illyrian Helmet, but the more and more that I see it, the more and more that it grows. I think I'm going to have to give this a 7, 6. No, I'll go with 6 out of 10 for the looks. I think it's not quite as iconic as many of the other Greek helmets, but still quite a cool design. I think there's a very fair reason as to why this helmet was so popular, and that's going to secure it in A tier. Now, next up we have a little bit more of a peculiar design that isn't so common, that being the Attic helmet, or the Attic Thracian. Of course, the ancient Greeks didn't label these helmets as much as we like to label things today. That's a very modern sort of categorization that we don't necessarily see in the ancient sources. So this is a far later helmet. You know, this is the type of thing we've seen in the 400 BCs, sort of mid-400 BCs. And this sort of builds on that hinged cheek plate Thracian design that we also see in the Chalcidian Helmet. However, visually I'm not a massive fan of it. It resembles, for me, a lot more sort of Romanesque Praetorian helmets. I still think it looks quite cool, but for me it lacks sort of the character that the previous two helmets had. So visually, I'm going to give it maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10. I know some people are a massive fan of the Attic Thracian. I'm just personally, this just not quite there for me. Comfort-wise, I've never worn an Attic Thracian. However, I would assume it would be very, very similar to that of an Illyrian helmet or a Chalcidian helmet, which I have worn. Very open face design, hinged cheek plates, so you can hinge them up or down depending on what you're after. So I think comfort-wise, it's going to have to be probably an 8 or a 9 as well. And protection-wise, of course, you still have an open face, but you still have cheek guards. The cheek guards cover actually less than the Illyrian helmet. So, we'll give protection still pretty solid, a 6 or a 7. This helmet really isn't one of my favourites, and this might be a little bit unpopular for people that do like it, but I'm going to drop this in C tier. It sort of lacks the character that I really like about helmets. It doesn't stand out to me as much as the Chalcidian helmets do for having the hinged cheek plates, and it's just not sort of my style of helmet that I'm a massive fan of. Next up is the Chalcidian helmet. This one is a Chalcidian, one of my favourite helmets of all time. I believe this one's housed in the British Museum. Does not have hinged cheek plates. So it's basically, we sort of start to see the Corinthian go from being slightly more open to enclosing itself into the Hermione Corinthian around the Persian Wars. So likely, because they were facing a lot of missile fire, they actually adapted the helmets to suit for warfare. But then, of course, they opened it up again afterwards, and we actually see them open it even more, going to the Pilos Helmet, which has no face protection. And we sort of see this evolution in Greek armour of going from heavily armoured to, as they evolve through eras of warfare, actually dropping more and more armour, which is interesting, because typically when we look at most other eras of military history, it's the opposite. You gain more and more armour as you go on. The Greeks seem to drop this. They drop the arm armour in the Archaic era, they drop the thigh and the foot armour, and they even start to drop cuirasses and greaves coming into the Peloponnesian Wars. However, there's some argument to be made that that's quite possibly because of the sheer number of sort of forcefully conscripted people who were poorer at that time, because it was obviously a mass conflict. Overall, I'm a massive visual fan of this helmet. I'm going to give that probably a 9 out of 10. Not quite as good as the Corinthian for me, but really close. I absolutely love that helmet. Comfort is going to be more than the Corinthian, because you are just going to have that slightly more breathability. This is probably going to be a 9 out of 10, I think. You know, you still have very good protection. It's very similar to the Corinthian, so I think probably protection-wise, this is going to be a 7. Overall, I absolutely love this helmet. It's going A tier, and it's going just above the Illyrian Helmet. Next up, we have the hinged Chalcidian Helmet. We often see Chalcidian helmets with hinged cheek plates. Overall, basically the same style of helmet. Though I personally don't like the look of the hinged cheek plates as much, and this particular example here is more open. But same points apply. I'm going to drop this in... visually I don't like it as much, so I'm going to drop it into B tier, but practically I think it is a very good helmet. Of course, you have the compromise of cheek plates that can hinge up and down. Of course, we also see different hinged cheek plates where they do have more protection. It's just, for me, it's not the style of helmet that I really like, so I'm dropping it in B. It might get pushed up, but right now, B. So pretty solid helmet, not a personal favourite of mine. So this is another later helmet. This is, of course, the Thracian Helmet. It goes by a couple other names as well. Very famously worn by the Macedonians, and of course the Thracians. Why it has that name. This is again sort of a later helmet. It's not super late, but it's not a typical helmet that many people think of when we think of ancient Greece. I can't tell whether I absolutely love this helmet or really don't. You know, it sort of looks like a smurf. Interestingly enough as well, this is sort of built from a Thracian hat, the same way that the Pilos Helmet is sort of a bronze version of the Pilos hat. So we sort of see these hats that get turned into helmets, the Boeotian helmet as well, is another example. And of course we often see, not always, but we often see these cheek plates embossed with these bearded designs. And I think that that's really cool. I've never worn one of these, so I can't really give a super in-depth answer of what it's like to wear one. I would assume it's quite comfortable. The face is very close-fitting. Your eyes, you know, it's sort of like wearing, how can I describe it? One of those theatre masks, you know. The eyes sort of come around like that, so your vision's not really impeded, but you still have very good nose protection and mouth protection. So overall, its protection value is probably very good. I'm probably going to give this, you know, eye holes are slightly bigger than that of a Corinthian, so probably a 7 for protection, 7 or 8. Comfort-wise, I'm assuming this is probably pretty comfortable. You know, you have some movability with the cheeks. It's pretty close-fitting, but you have good vision and good airflow. So again, it's probably going to be about a 7 or 8. And protection, still pretty good. Pretty solid, 7 or 8 for all the way around. I don't think it warrants me putting it A tier. I'm going to put it B tier just behind the hinged Chalcidian. Overall, really solid helmet. Next up is, of course, the Hermione Corinthian, the sort of iconic Corinthian helmet. I'm going to pop this straight up on S tier. Now, it's actually not my personal favourite style of helmet. I do prefer the more archaic sort of style. However, this helmet is just the most iconic hoplite helmet. You know, everyone knows what a Corinthian helmet is. Comfort-wise, it is less comfortable to wear than I would probably say all of the other helmets on this list. It's very, very close fitting, which is good. You want it to be close fitting, but the cheek plates come very, very close. It offers excellent protection. This level of protection, I'm gonna have to give protection probably 10 out of 10. For it's probably, I believe, the most protective of Greek helmets that we see. Very, very good protection. Offers very, very good protection. You know, you have a small slit. You have the eye holes, but otherwise everything else is very, very well covered. Visually, I mean, come on. It's like the perfect Corinthian helmet, basically. I'm going to have to give it a 9 out of 10. I won't give it a 10 out of 10. I do prefer the Archaic Corinthian, but awesome. But comfort is where this helmet sort of lacks. So wearing this in Greece for a long period of time, in Plataea 2022 I wore the Hermione Corinthian, this year I wore the Archaic Corinthian, you do overheat a lot. So that's why we often see the sort of perched on top of the head, which works fine. You can march like that as well. And we later see the Apollo Corinthian sort of evolve to just be a sort of helmet that's modelled to look like a Corinthian one like that. Offers great protection, but your eyes are typically more enclosed. You don't have tunnel vision. Your peripherals are pretty darn good, to be honest. Most of these helmets don't really interrupt your peripheral vision, which I don't think many people that haven't worn helmets, people that haven't worn helmets think that your peripheral vision is not very good, whereas your peripheral vision is pretty good. You basically get to see everything that you'd normally see. But there is a massive blind spot here. You can't see that much. And it is harder to breathe in, but overall a very solid helmet. But there is a reason as to why they started to evolve to open up, of course, because people found that that compromise to be better than the Corinthian. So this style of Corinthian does basically fade out of use around 450 BC. So this type of thing you wouldn't really see in the Peloponnesian Wars. And speaking of Peloponnesian Wars, the final helmet on the list is the Pilos Helmet, which I used to hate. Okay, I really used to hate the Pilos Helmet. It's just a cone, right? It's the Pilos cap that they turned bronze, and famously worn by the Laconians in the Peloponnesian War as well, so the Spartans. I don't know where to put this, because I actually really, really love the simplicity of it. Part of me wants to put it up on S tier, but I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to put this on B. I like the simpleness of it, and the more and more that I see it, this particular example isn't my favourite, but the more and more that I see it, the more that I do quite like it. And it's very simple, it's very easy to mass produce, likely why it became very popular in the time of the Peloponnesian Wars for the Laconians, who had one of the largest land armies in Greece. I quite like the simplicity of it. I especially like it when we see it with crests, and we sometimes see later Pilos helmets with hinged cheek plates as well, so we do sometimes see the adaptation of face protection on those styles of helmets, however not typically very common. Comfort-wise, I imagine this is probably a 10 out of 10. You know, it's basically a nasal helm without the nasal. So it's just, you know, sits on your head, offers very good protection, of course, glancing surface, a conical helmet. But of course your face is completely exposed. So you compromise that protection for comfort and mass produciveness and sort of cheapness. However, of course, there's a reason why we see lots of fighters, and for instance, in the medieval period, you see many knights fighting with the visors tipped up, and that's because that compromise of protection and, you know, sort of breathability, visibility, allows you to sort of survey the battlefield more. So that is a compromise that many people would choose to make, and of course that's sort of understandable. Visually, I actually do quite like it. However, I really dislike some of them, so I'm going to give this one a 5. It's nothing special. It's just a neat sort of very, very simple design. I can understand some people might really like this helmet because of how simple it is. Some may really not like it, which I think both are very, very fair. I used to really not like it. And protection-wise, I'm also going to give this a 5. So it is the least protective out of all of the helmets that we've listed in this tier list. However, it still offers very good protection. Of course, the whole top of your head is protected. It's a glancing surface, and of course, again, in combination with that sort of shield warfare that we're talking about, well over half your face is quite easily protected as well. But of course there is a compromise between having lower face, no lower face protection, as that your lower face is in a greater threat of being hit. What do you think of how I've ranked these helmets? Would you rank them differently? What are your personal favourite ancient Greek helmets? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this little video here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below, and I hopefully see you in the next video.